Hi there, my name is Jeremiah Peck, and in this series of videos I'm going to be talking about the National Counselor Examination, or the NCE, which is put on by the NBCC, the National Board of Certified Counselors. Now you're probably watching this video because you have recently earned your master's degree or doctoral degree in counseling or a related field and are looking to pursue a licensure in your state. Perhaps you're in an academic program which requires passing the NCE or similar to complete your program. Now you're probably watching these videos because you're looking for tools and tips and tricks how to pass this exam and how to study for it, and looking at what to study and how to handle this big task, seemingly really big task, of passing the National Counselor exam. Well, in this video and the series of videos here on the channel, I'll be hoping to break down each of the core areas in the NCE with some content as well as specific tips, tricks, and skills and information you'll need to really be successful in passing the National Counselor exam. Now, a little bit about myself. I am a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Washington, as well as a national certified counselor through the NBCC. In addition to this, I am a national approved clinical supervisor through the Center of Credentialing and Education as well. Some of my background includes I'm an assistant professor in a graduate in counseling program where I teach a variety of classes on the different core areas as related to the counseling field. So today in this introduction video, I'm just going to be talking about the overview or an introduction to the NCE, and then in subsequent videos we'll be talking about the specific core areas. Now don't click away just yet, because in this video for an introduction we're talking about how the NCE is organized and specific information that will help you focus the areas of where you'll direct the bulk of your studying in this way. So one of the first questions I get asked often as a counselor educator is what is the passing score or the passing percentage or the passing grade on the NCE? And surprisingly, this is not an easy question to answer. The reason why this is not an easy question to answer is because typically you might see an exam where 0% is 0 and 100% is if you get everything right, and maybe you're looking at this as an exam so as to say, well, what's the percentage? Do I need to get a 70 or a 75 or a 90% to pass? And the quick answer, or the fast answer, is actually it depends. There are different versions of the NCE exam, so you can take the exam multiple times, or several different people can take the exam. And the version of the exam, because there are hundreds of questions, the version of the exam that any individual takes will be different than another version that someone else might take. Not only do these different versions of the exam depend on the scoring, but the passing score for the exam also varies depending on the state where the individual takes the exam. So let's break down how many questions are on the NCE and what it takes to pass the NCE as a whole. First thing you should know is that the NCE is comprised of 200 questions. Now that might seem like a lot, and that might seem really daunting and overwhelming, but one of the helpful things to know is of these 200 questions, 40 of these questions are not graded at all. Well, you'll still see whether you have whether you got them right or not, but they don't count towards your overall grade. The reason why these 40 questions don't count towards your overall grade is because these 40 questions, which you won't know which questions these are in the exam, but these 40 questions are sample questions that the NCE or the NBCC is sampling for future versions of the exam. So they use these 40 questions on your exam to try to determine if the questions are worded properly, if most people get them, if they meet the statistical validity for percentiles to be reliable and valid questions. Now this leaves 160 questions on your actual exam which will be graded. Now the difficulty is it could be as such that because you don't know which 40 questions of the 200 are the sample questions or not, because they're sort of mixed into the entire exam, that you could be getting a lot of questions right that aren't graded questions, and you could think that you're doing better than you actually might be. I don't see this very often. What I actually see more often is a number of these sample questions being quite difficult, and counselors or individuals who are taking the exam become discouraged by getting several questions in a row that they don't know or don't understand, and they begin to lose heart during the exam. The reason why I want you to know that up to 40 questions on the exam are not graded and they're sample questions is those questions likely are really difficult because they're testing them. So if you encounter a block of questions or several questions, or you are answering and you think to yourself, boy, about a quarter of these I think I've just gotten wrong because I didn't know the answer to them at all, that's okay. Don't allow the discouragement or the frustration to cause you to become stressed or anxious or even give up during the exam, because those questions that you got wrong could very well be the sample questions, and you're actually doing a lot better than you think that you are. Now, let's talk about those 160 questions. I've seen a passing score of the 160 be anywhere from about 90 to about 105. And as I mentioned, the passing score does vary on which version of the test and which state that you're in when you take it. But generally, you need about that many of 160 graded questions to pass, right around 60% or so on average. Now, this is a very realistic and doable percentage to be able to pass and be successful with this NCE examination. Of the 160 questions, it's also helpful to have a breakdown of what specific categories the questions are coming from. The NCE is written to coincide with CACREP, which is the Center for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Programs. They have 8 core areas as part of their accredited counseling degree programs, and the NCE's 160 questions are based in the 8 areas of CACREP, and those areas are human growth and development, social and cultural diversity, helping relationships, group work, career counseling, assessment, research and program evaluation, and professional orientation and ethical practice. Now, of those 8 core areas, you think the math would be really easy just to say, well, let's just put 20 questions in 8 areas, 160 questions, and call it that. But that's not how the questions are broken down. Often I see individuals spend hours and hours focusing on one specific topic to study, when that topic may only have a small handful of questions, as compared to another topic with 30 questions that they didn't spend as much time studying. So for that reason, I'm going to tell you the breakdown of how many questions each of these topics has, so that you can focus your studying on the appropriate topic. Now, the questions, or the topic that has the most questions, is helping relationships. Of the 160 questions, these make up 36 of the questions, has to do with the helping relationship of the counseling profession. Next, professional orientation and ethics. I strongly recommend you to take a look at the ethics videos included on this channel, so that you can look at the professionalism and ethical practice and review ethical decision-making models as they relate to 29 questions on the National Counselor exam. Now, the next 2 areas are tied, both with career counseling with 20 questions, as well as assessment with 20 questions also. Now, part of career work is also knowing a lot of the theorists that have done pioneering work in the career counseling field. I often encounter that many graduate degree programs in counseling, unless it was focused specifically on career counseling, do not really have as robust of a training in this area. So for that reason, if your graduate program did not have specific classes on career counseling, or maybe this whole area is a little bit fuzzy because you haven't done any clinical work specifically with career counseling, again, I would recommend doing some extra studying in this topic and watching the videos on this channel that have to do with career counseling, particularly if you haven't done a lot of this work by way of refreshing. Again, this is 20 questions of the 160 on the exam. The same goes for assessment with 20 questions as well. The next two sections, which are tied for the next place, is group work with 16 questions and research and program evaluation with another 16 questions. It's helpful to look at these two separate topics, both with having 16 questions, because similarly to career counseling, you might be in a clinical context, perhaps for your internship or otherwise, where you didn't do a significant amount of group work. Perhaps as you are thinking right now and you're hearing me, you're thinking, I'm not sure what the stages of group work are, of forming and norming and storming and all of those. If you knew those words, excellent. If those words seem foreign to you and you think to yourself, I'm not sure if I know anything about group work, this might be one of those areas that you focus some specific studying on, and you watch the videos on this channel related to group work so you can gain some mastery in those areas as well. Research and program evaluation, you might find involved with some of these questions are some statistics and some tests and data measurements, so it's going to be helpful to know some of that as well. Admittedly, most of us who are taking the National Counselor exam, we're counselors and we're not mathematicians, so the idea of statistics may scare you or may overwhelm you or may stress you out. We want to take away the intimidation regarding some of these topics, and we're going to be doing that in those videos. The last two topics that are on the NCE have to do with human growth and development, which has 12 questions, and then social and cultural diversity, which has about 11 questions. And those round out the last two areas of the 8 core areas of the National Counseling Exam. This has just been an introduction, an overview of the National Counseling Exam, the 200 questions, of which 40 are test questions and 160 are graded questions. Of those 160, you need to get about 90 to 100 or so to pass, though the exact score varies by state, and those 160 questions are broken down into the 8 categories of a CACREP standardized counseling program. Now, in additional videos on this channel, you'll find videos on all of these topics, and as you go through those videos, my hope is that you'll be better equipped to be successful with the National Counselor Examination. Take care, and I'll see you next time.